Am I wrong for walking out of my cousin's wedding? I, 45 female, was recently contacted out of the blue by my cousin, John, 47 male, daughter, Emily, 23, who wanted to meet more of his family after he's been no contact with all of us since his wedding about 25 years ago. He was apparently furious with her when he found out and forbade any further contact unless we all apologized for walking out of his wedding. John had been engaged to Rachel for about 2 years and she was a very lovely and sweet person. All of the family loved her and they really tried to make her feel like part of the family. They'd come to holidays and birthdays for all the family and we threw a party for her on her birthday. We didn't hear from them in a month or two leading up to the wedding, but we figured they were just busy with last minute planning and none of us were in the wedding party. On their wedding day, all of us, about 20 cousins, aunts, and uncles, turned up to the venue to see signs for John and Kristen's wedding. We thought we were at the wrong place initially until John came out and confirmed that it was the right wedding hall. John said that he'd called off the engagement with Rachel a month prior after reconnecting with an old flame, and they decided to use the date to get married instead. We were all confused and upset, and while John was trying to calm everyone down, I went and used the venue's phone to call Rachel. She said that 2 weeks before, she had caught John cheating with Kristen and ended things right then. She said that John had refused to cancel what they could for the wedding and get back what money they could. Instead, he used them towards this new wedding with Kristen. Most of the family and I then walked out, saying that we were not going to stay for this bait-and-switch wedding, especially after he had treated Rachel so horribly and him not even telling anyone that he was marrying someone else. Yeah, that's fucked. He said that it shouldn't matter who he is marrying and that as a family, we had to stay and support him. We didn't, so he hasn't spoken to any of us for 25 years. So, am I the asshole for walking out of the wedding and not apologizing even after 25 years? Hell no. Good for you.
Story time about how I set up my boyfriend to cheat on me so that I could break up with him. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I'm at the airport, so I'm sorry if it's noisy. My boyfriend and I have been together for way too long. When our relationship first started, I was constantly chasing him. He never wanted a relationship and basically didn't want to commit to me. So basically, he was trying to be an F-boy while he was with me. And of course, I let him do whatever he wanted because I was too afraid to lose him. I didn't want to be that annoying, nagging girlfriend, so I just never said anything to him. Fast forward 5 years. I've had a huge glow up since we started dating. I lost weight, I got super fit at the gym, like I have abs now. I opened up my own nail salon, and I even got myself a car and a house. Well, let's just say that he stayed the same. In fact, he has no ambitions to getting a better job or anything, and it really annoys me. He started talking about getting married, and I was like, hell nah. But I don't know how to tell him that I don't want to be with him anymore. I mean, I love him, but I just don't want to be with him anymore. And because I'm too much of a coward to actually break up with him, I set him up to cheat on me. Found this girl on Instagram, and I told her to DM my boyfriend. He DM'd her back. Part two of how I got my boyfriend to cheat on me so that I could break up with him. So I got this girl on Instagram to DM him, and this girl was totally his type. Basically, she looked like me, but with blonde hair. So she sent him a little DM. He wasted no time and he got back to her. That same day, they set up a freaking date. So I told this girl that all she had to do was go out with him. Like, meet him at a restaurant, but that was it. Little did I know that she had a crush on him. And it makes sense now thinking about it because my friend recommended her, and my friend afterward told me that she actually had a crush on him. A few days later, she sends me a picture of him sleeping in her bed, without a shirt on. And she basically tells me everything that happened. So now, I have all this proof. But guess what? I actually got really pissed. Broke my heart because I didn't expect him to do that. And he was totally avoiding all my calls and messages. He finally came over to my house, and that's when I showed him all of the receipts. All the pictures and messages between him and the girl. That's when he told me that she drugged him and forced him into doing it. Of course, I knew that wasn't true. Then he pulls out a ring and asked me to marry him. That's when he got on his knees and started begging. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how I set up my boyfriend to cheat on me so that I could break up with him. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. As he's begging on his hands and knees for me to marry him, that's a call from the girl that he cheated on me with. He puts the phone in his pocket and he started acting all nervous, so that's how I knew. That's when I told him to show me his phone. Then he ran to the bathroom and threw it into the toilet. Then he locked himself in my bathroom and basically begged me for 3 hours to stay with him. Told me that he would never be able to find anyone as good as I was, and that he loved me and blah 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 blah. At this point, I told him I was gonna call the cops to get him out, but I just couldn't bring myself to it. I really felt bad for him. I mean, after all, I did set him up. He eventually left and I didn't speak to him for a few weeks. A few days ago, I actually started talking to this new guy. He's been super flaky, and every time we decide to go out, he always bails. So now I'm thinking maybe I should take my ex back. He sent me flowers, but I've been trying to ignore him. But my parents don't want me to get back with him. Part of me thinks that he was probably already cheating on me. I mean, he DM'd that girl really quick. I honestly don't know what to do, and I'm even starting to feel guilty about what I did. At the same time, he totally shouldn't have cheated. What do you guys think I should do? Story time about how my husband is threatening to cheat on me unless we have a 3-person sexy time, if you know what I mean. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It's sending me on Instagram. My husband and I have been married for 5 years. The first year we were together, we had kids. We have 2 kids now, and they are my priority. A year ago, my husband started complaining about how I don't pay any attention to him anymore. I started doing my best to try to give him more affection and just more time with me, but it's so hard with the kids. My husband does help me with the kids, but he works a lot and goes to the gym a lot. So when he's not home, it's basically my responsibility to do everything for the kids. They never tell you how hard it is to have kids and how hard hard it is to look after yourself and your relationship. I suggested we have date nights, but we still haven't gone on any. I told him that we should just go to the beach and hang out on our own, but he kept making up excuses. A month ago, he asked me if I would ever consider having a 3-person sexy time. I hope you understand what I mean. I told him I wouldn't be comfortable with that, and he said okay. A few days after that, he asked me again. This time I probed and asked him why he was saying that. That's when he confessed that the only way he can stay faithful is by inviting someone else into our bedroom. I was really heartbroken. I never expected him to say anything like that to me, so I just started to cry. Then he got angry because I started to cry and told me that he needs to have more fun in this relationship. I asked him if he had already cheated on me, and he swore that he didn't. The kids were in the other bedroom, so I didn't want to start another argument. I let it go, but I couldn't stop thinking about what he had told me. That's when I got scared that he might actually cheat on me. I started becoming really insecure, and he hated this. I started asking him almost on a daily basis if he had cheated on me. He kept denying it, so I believed him. A few days later, we got into a fight about the kids. Out of nowhere, he starts threatening to cheat on me unless we have a 3-person sexy time. This time, he wouldn't let it go. He told me he would find somebody to cheat on me with, but for me not to worry because it wouldn't mean anything to him. He was basically asking me for permission to have an affair. I felt hopeless, so I finally accepted his offer. That's when he got really excited and started showing me pictures of girls at the gym. He told me he'd been talking to a few already and that he could get one of the girls to come to our house that very same week. Part 2 is up. Part 2 of how my husband is threatening to cheat on me unless we have a 3-person sexy time. Disclaimer, this is not my Storytime. Send me on Instagram. That's when he told me that he could have a girl come to our house this week. Felt like I had no choice but to accept because I didn't want him to cheat on me. Later that night, I asked him who he'd been talking to at the gym. He told me there were several girls at the gym that would flirt with him every single time, and that one of them had offered to come to our house. I couldn't get it out of my head that he had probably already cheated on me with one of these girls. I mean, why try to involve me when he could do it on his own with them? A few days later, he told me there was a girl that was willing to come over to our house on Friday. That's when my husband asked me to go get waxed and to go to the salon and do something to my hair. So I went to get waxed and got highlights at the salon. I won't lie, I actually felt really good after this. When my husband saw me later that night, he said I looked amazing. One thing about me, I've always been pretty athletic, and since having kids, my body has snapped back. I'm not very self-conscious about my body, but the thought of having someone else in our bedroom just made me feel gross. She finally arrived, and I was expecting a young hot thing. This woman was in her 40s. She was 12 years older than me, and she was not in very good shape. By the way, we left the kids with a babysitter, so don't worry. We all went up to the bedroom, and my husband poured us glasses of wine. That's when my husband kissed the woman. Part 3 is up. Part 3 of how my husband is threatening to cheat on me unless we have a 3-person sexy time, if you know what I mean. Disclaimer, not my story time. Send me on Instagram. The 3 of us were finally up in the bedroom. My husband leaned in to kiss her and they were making out for about 30 seconds. Right in front of me like I didn't even exist. That's when it hit me and I realized what we were about to do. I was in my own house, in my own bedroom with a random woman who was older than me, and no offense, I thought I was definitely more attractive. Finally, when they stopped kissing, I tell my husband I can't do this. That's when he gets really angry, grabs me by the arm and takes me into the hallway. He tells me if I don't do this, then I should just leave the house because he's still gonna do it with her. And that from now on, he would be able to do whatever he wanted because I wasn't willing to cooperate. Thankfully, the woman came out of the bedroom and told my husband that it wasn't worth it if we were going to be arguing. He begged her not to leave. It was pathetic. But of course, she left anyway. That's when he grabs his things and tells me he's going to the gym. Cried for 3 hours and went to pick up the kids. When my husband got home, he apologized and told me that he probably overreacted. Probably? Then he starts begging me to please reconsider doing it again with the same woman. That's when I asked him if he had a thing for older women. I told him that I was much more attractive and younger than this other woman, so why did he want her? Then he confessed that his thing is older women. Then he asked me what was the oldest I would be willing to go. I told him I didn't know if I even wanted to do it with someone else. That's when he started threatening again. He said he'd go do it either way and that I would just have to deal with it. That's when I told him that maybe we should just consider getting a divorce. He got so angry he smashed a glass on the countertop. After I let him calm down, I asked him if he'd already been having an affair with that woman. He keeps denying it, but something's telling me he already did it. Told me he wouldn't give me the divorce because he loves me, but he's also saying he's gonna cheat on me. I'm seriously considering inviting the woman back over just to please my husband. I know that's just gonna lead to bad things. I asked my best friend and she told me to just go through with it, and that if I have to save my marriage by having other people in my bed, then I should just do it. But I just can't bring myself to saying yes. I told my mom and she told me to get a divorce no matter what. She guarantees that he's already cheated. Should I say yes or should I leave him?
Story time on how my babysitter used a teddy bear to spy on me while I changed. Okay, so boom. My parents worked a lot and they both worked night shifts. My dad would come home first at like 11 p.m. and then my mom would usually come around 1 a.m. My parents didn't want me to be home alone for too long, so I would have a babysitter from 3 when I would get off of school till 11 when my dad came home. By the way, I'm 12 and the babysitter that we're going to be talking about is 19. So I usually stayed with my older cousin till my dad came home, but my cousin and her family moved. So my parents were forced to get me an actual babysitter. So like a week into me dealing with this new babysitter, one night I was changing and my babysitter tried to open the door, but it was locked. I told her that I was changing, but she told me that I have to leave my door unlocked just in case something happens. I only believed her because my parents had a similar rule. But eventually, my babysitter was always walking into me accidentally while I changed. I was getting annoyed, so I had to think of something to stop her. Yeah, I'm running out of time. Like for part 2. Part 2 on how my babysitter used a teddy bear to spy on me while I changed. Okay, so boom, like I said, my babysitter kept accidentally walking in on me while I was changing. So to stop her, after I would get out the shower, I would literally go to her and say, hey, I'm in my room changing. I'll be right back. Please don't come in. So she had no choice but to stop accidentally seeing me. Well, that stopped her for a week, and then she got me a teddy bear. I was excited because it was a pretty big bear and it was super soft. She came in my room with me and said she got the perfect spot for the bear. And I was like, okay, cool. Y'all, she put it right on my dresser, front and center, great view to see everything. And ever since then, she never came back into my room. Y'all, the things I did in my room, like dancing with no clothes on, acting like I was Beyonce on stage, shaking my little booty with barely any clothes on. And little did I know she was downstairs watching the whole thing, cause the camera was in the teddy bear's eyes. Like for part 3. Part 3 on how my babysitter used a teddy bear to spy on me while I changed. Okay, so boom, like I said, she gave me a teddy bear with camera eyes and put it on my dresser. I, of course, didn't notice that there was actually cameras in the eyes of the teddy bear. Well, one day my mom was cleaning my room and she asked me where did I get this bear from? And I told her that my babysitter got it for me. And my mom was like, oh, okay. For some reason, my mom was creeped out about the bear and she ended up putting it in the washroom to clean it later. That same night, before I even got a hello, my babysitter said, why'd you move the bear? And I looked at her and said, how did you even know the bear was moved? She kind of stumbled on her words, but then she told me that my mom told her. I obviously fell for it and was like, oh yeah, she put it in the washroom to clean later. Y'all, my babysitter went to the washroom and took the bear and she placed it back on the dresser at the same spot. And she told me to tell my mom that we washed the bear together. I really didn't care, so I was just like, yeah, sure, whatever. And I went about my day. This is where it gets real. Like for part 4. Part 4 on how my babysitter used a teddy bear to spy on me while I changed. Okay, so boom, like I said, after my mom moved the teddy bear, my babysitter went in and moved it back. The next day, it was Saturday, so my mom was off. My mom came in my room and saw the teddy bear and asked me why I brought it back up. So I said, honestly, Mom, the babysitter put it back up. She was so sad that she moved it. You should have never even told her. And my mom just looked at me confused and was like, what do you mean? I didn't tell her I moved the bear. And I said, of course you did, Mom. You probably just forgot. Because before she even walked through those doors, she asked me why I moved the bear. My mom's eyes opened wide and she froze. My mom took her phone out and opened a flash and shined it into the bear's eyes. And then she screamed, oh my gosh, and then grabbed the teddy bear and ran to her room. There the camera was. My mom called the cops and then the cops went to my babysitter's house like 15 minutes away. And my babysitter's parents, not knowing what's going on, let the cops in. Y'all, like for part 5. Part 5 on how my babysitter used the teddy bear to spy on me while I changed. Okay, so boom, like I said, my mom grabbed the teddy bear and ran to her room and called the cops. The cops went to my babysitter's house and her parents led them in. So the cops went into my babysitter's room and then confiscated the laptop. Y'all, she had videos of me and about 5 other girls that she babysat for. And she was recording all of us naked. And we're all minors. She, of course, went to jail and my parents refused to hire anyone to babysit me anymore. They actually prefer a family member or they just leave me home, to be honest. And my parents actually didn't tell me what happened until I got older, which I'm now 18, because they didn't want me to feel so violated. So they handled it all without me knowing, which I'm grateful for because I probably would have had a mental breakdown if my mom really told me what happened at that very moment. So anyways, be careful who you leave alone with your kids, guys. Story time on how me and my mom walked in on my sister sleeping with my stepdad. Okay, so boom. This was back in 2017. So I was 17 and my sister was 20. And my stepdad was 32. So when I was 16, my sister and I were introduced by my mom to my stepdad. And right off the bat, my sister was very flirty with him. I would always catch them doing things like my sister rubbing my stepdad's muscles and him just standing there loving it. I would try to tell my mom, but she would always tell me that they're just getting along and that they're basically father and daughter. Anyways, this day it was my birthday and me and my mom were gonna have a girls' day. So that meant that my sister and my stepdad were going to be all alone. My mom and I told them that we would be back around 10. So we go to a store to shop, but long story short, I fell and hurt my foot, so we had to go back early. As soon as we get into the house, we hear moaning. I immediately looked at my mom and told her, I told you so. As soon as I said that, my mom ran upstairs like the NBA, like for part 2 on how me and my mom walked in on my sister sleeping with my stepdad. Okay, so boom, like I said, we came home early and immediately heard moaning. I looked at my mom and said, I told you so. As soon as I said that, my mom ran upstairs like she was a track star. She's a runner, she's a track star. Anyways, I ran after my mom and we opened the door together and we see my sister naked with my stepdad. My sister immediately started crying and my mom was literally beating my stepdad. And me, oh yeah, I was just laughing. Like, that was not shocking at all. Like, I literally saw it coming. After my mom was done beating my stepdad's ass, he was begging her for forgiveness. And y'all, she forgave him. I was so mad that I called the cops. But then the cops told me that it wasn't an emergency, so they hung up on me. So I was even more fed up. So I decided that I was going to beat my stepdad's ass, but 100 times worse than my mom did. Then I did it to my sister, and it gets worse. Like for part 3. Part 3 on how me and my mom walked in on my sister sleeping with my stepdad. Okay, so boom, like I said, I was beating my stepdad's ass, and then I was beating my sister's ass. Because I was so mad that my mom literally forgave this man for sleeping with her daughter. And my sister was literally always trying to sleep with my stepdad. Like she was sick. They all were sick. So I called my biological dad and I told him everything. Then he came over and then he gave my stepdad a real ass whooping. My sister actually lost her V card to my stepdad. And y'all, she got pregnant. I didn't want anything to do with that baby and no one else in the family wanted anything to do with that baby. So my sister ended up giving the baby up for adoption. And shortly after she gave birth, she went to jail, as she should, where she belongs. And so does my stepdad. Look, y'all, not all family is good family. They could be crazy and nasty. Goodbye. Story time on how my cousin tried to sexually assault me. Okay, y'all, so boom. I went to Mexico for the summer because my parents wanted me to meet my grandparents. I went there with my brother so I wasn't alone. And throughout our time there, me and my brother met my grandparents and other people in our family. A month into my visit, I met my cousin Josh. That's not his real name, but we'll just call him Josh. When I first met him, Josh was super nice to both me and my brother. Everything was fine and he even stayed with us a couple weeks until something happened. One day when I was in my room that I was staying at, I was just minding my business playing Minecraft. Now, my room had no doors because they were working on getting new doors. And let me tell you guys that I was 8 years old and he was a teenager. He came in my room and I didn't think anything of it. He was just basically watching me play Minecraft. But then he came up to me and sat on my bed and then got on top of me. Like for part 2. Part 2 on how my cousin tried to sexually assault me. Okay, so boom, like I said, he came into my room and started watching me play Minecraft. But then he came to my bed and got on top of me. I was laying down on my stomach, so to give y'all a visual, he was basically on my back, like my butt. Then he tried to pull my shorts down and told me, I'll let you keep playing Minecraft if you let me touch your ass. Let me remind you guys that I'm 8 years old and this guy's a teenager. I didn't really understand what was going on, but I just pushed him off and said, I don't really want to play anymore. Then I threw the phone and I left. I felt weird after, but I didn't know why. Him going and laying on me and touching on me like that, I was just uncomfortable. And I know things could have gotten bad and even worse if there were doors. I kept this in for 2 years, so I think it's time to tell everyone now. Remember, it's never okay for anybody to take advantage or inappropriately touch you. Story time on how my brother got me pregnant. We jumping right into it. Okay, so boom. I came out to my parents and told them I was gay. My parents were not having it and they were pissed. My parents were actually so mad they kicked me out. After my parents kicked me out, my brother told me he would let me back in the house if I did the nasty with him. I know, sounds crazy. Why would I do that? But I was young at the time and I was dumb. I was young and dumb. So I agreed and I did the nasty with my brother. So I was living in my parents' house in secret and hiding every time they would be around. It worked at first, but I was always nauseous and throwing up, so they eventually found out that I was still in the house. My mom realized I was having pregnancy symptoms and said to me, oh, you're not gay. Imagine your parents being so happy that you're pregnant instead of gay. But wait till they find out who the father is. Like for part 2. Part 2 on how my brother got me pregnant. Okay, so boom, like I said, my mom realized I was having pregnancy symptoms and said, oh, you're not gay. I was so confused, but when I took the pregnancy test, I tested positive and realized that I was pregnant. I immediately knew the father was my brother because I lost my V card to my brother and he's literally the only person I've ever done the nasty with. And when I told my brother, he was happy. Like, happy as fuck. Apparently, my brother always liked me, so getting me pregnant was great news for him. Even though I'm his little sister. Yuck. I ended up cussing my brother out. We fought, and like, I literally violated him, y'all. Like, I said some not so kind words to that man. Obviously, once my parents found out, it was over for me. I ran away and left and became a stripper. Then I eventually found an amazing man who I married. And now I'm 29 with 2 beautiful, kind daughters. Bye. Story time on how I had to beat my best friend and my boyfriend's ass. Okay, so boom, me and my best friend have been friends for 8 years. Years later, when I met my boyfriend and we started dating, my best friend was always weirdly jealous. I didn't think much of it because I thought we were best friends and she would never do something like that to me, you know? Or so I thought. Well, one day me and my best friend were shopping and she got a text. She then tells me she has to go and just leaves. I didn't even have a chance to tell her bye. So I call my boyfriend and I say, hey, where are you? Then I hear the door close and a girl's voice in the background. I asked him, what was that? Who is that? And he had the audacity to say that was his mom. So I got to his house and talked to his mom and she said he wasn't there. Then his mom tells me he went to a hotel room. She told me the info and I went there. And guess what I found out? Like Part 2 on how I had to beat my best friend and my boyfriend's ass. Okay, so boom, like I said, his mom tells me he's in a hotel room and gives me the info. So I go over there. I needed to investigate. So I got there and when I approached the room, I heard moaning. My heart dropped and I immediately started knocking on the door. But I didn't say it was me. I start to get so nervous thinking about what's going on in there. Then my boyfriend answers the door with his robe on and I immediately pushed him to the side to find my best friend naked on the bed. That's when I ended up beating their asses. I was actually beating them up so bad that a random girl in the hallway had to come in and stop the fight. Y'all know how the typical boy begging to come back and the best friend hating thing? Yeah, I was good off of that. Good riddance. I'm glad I taught them a lesson. Story time on how my dad cheated on my mom with my boyfriend and she was the one to walk in on them. Okay, so boom, my parents were happily married and been together for 20 years. My mom and my dad were both 48 years old and I was 16. Now my boyfriend, who my parents loved and treated like their own, was also 16. My boyfriend was a little feminine, but nothing crazy. There was a couple rumors in school of him being gay, but there was never any proof and he always denied it. A weird dynamic in me and my boyfriend's relationship is that he never really wanted to get freaky with me. I had to practically beg him to make out with me. And at times when we were doing the nasty, sometimes his hot dog would, I became kind of insecure, but he just told me that he was one of those guys that weren't affectionate. And the way he would console me and embrace me, I believed him and thought it was normal. Other than that, our relationship was pretty peaceful. Well, him and my dad's relationship was always weird. And you, me, and my mom, we're about to find out why. Like for part 2. Part 2 on how my dad cheated on my mom with my boyfriend and she was the one to walk in on them. Okay, so boom, like I said, my dad and my boyfriend's relationship was always weird. My boyfriend would come over my house like every day and spend time with me and my dad. Not so much my mom because my mom worked the night shift. He would usually get to know my mom on her off days, which was Saturday and Sundays. So over the year that my boyfriend's been coming over, my boyfriend would always end up in my dad's room. My boyfriend would tell me that he's gonna go over to my dad's room and play Xbox with him. I tried going in the room sometimes just to watch them play, but they both convinced me that it was a guy's thing and that it was a bonding moment, like a father and son type of thing. So I would always just do my own thing in my room and wait for my boyfriend to come back. Well, one Monday night when my mom is supposed to be working, she actually wasn't feeling good, so she came back home. I myself didn't even know my mom came back. So I know for a fact that my dad and my brother didn't hear either. All of a sudden, I heard my mom open their room door and scream, "Oh my God!" And I immediately ran out my room like for part 3. Part 3 on how my dad cheated on my mom with my boyfriend, and she was the one who walked in on them. Okay, so boom, like I said, my mom opened the door and screamed, "Oh my God!" I immediately ran out my room and went to my mom and stood right next to her. Me and my mom stood there in shock while we looked at my dad's hot dog in my boyfriend's peach. All 4 of us was literally frozen in place. My mom's reaction is actually something you wouldn't expect. She didn't fight or anything. She just closed the door, told me to go to my room, called the cops on my dad because obviously my boyfriend is a minor. Police came, took my dad, brought him to jail, and my mom divorced him. No kicking, no fighting, no none of that. Not even any screaming. I'm not gonna lie, I told everyone in my school. It got so bad for my boyfriend, he had to actually change schools. And his parents are currently taking my dad to court. Now, me and my mom literally both don't speak to my dad. And yeah, me and my mom bonded because we were both literally cheated on with each other's significant others. So if your boyfriend says he's gonna play games with your dad, ask him what type of games. Story time on how the guy I was dating lied about his age to get with me. Okay, y'all, so today's story is my own. Okay, so boom, this took place on my senior year of high school when I was 17. In my school, everyone had to complete 100 hours of community service to graduate. I ended up doing community service at a daycare that was literally right next to my house. I was working with a lot of kids and they literally all loved me. I got many crazy stories about the time I was working at this daycare, y'all. Sheesh. But anyways, there was this one particular kid who was real quiet but super sweet. The teacher actually asked me to give him some one-on-one attention because he was a little behind. Everything went great and I could see he had potential, so my teacher wanted to introduce me to his parents. He told me his mom usually picks him up, so I was like, yeah, okay, cool. Well, a guy ended up picking him up and he looked kind of young, like my age, and he was 6'2", and ooh, height, y'all, that's my weakness. And of course, very handsome. As soon as he looked at me, he gave me a, ooh, you a snack look. I was so nervous, y'all. Like for part two. Part two on how the guy I was dating lied about his age to get with me. Okay, so boom, like I said, I seen a tall, handsome guy walk up and I got a little nervous. But whatever, I started talking to him about his son and he just smiled the whole time and gave me the look. This how he was looking at me, y'all. Like, please, if you're not ready for no action, don't give me that look. So I told him, your son is amazing and he's so sweet. And do you know what this guy told me? He told me, oh, I'm not his dad, I'm big bro. And I believed him. From that day forward, he was always coming to pick up his little brother, and we would always like flirt and stuff. Well, one day I was in the playground playing with the kids, waiting for all the parents to come pick up their children. I was sitting on a swing just like reading a book, and he came and sat next to me. This was the first time we were both kind of alone, like literally no teachers around because I was the only one watching the kids play. And this is the moment he asked me for my number. Y'all, we started talking and texting every night. This is when things got spicy, like for part three. Part three on how the guy I was dating lied about his age to get with me. Okay, so boom, like I said, this was the first time we were finally alone, and this is when he asked me for my number. He knew what he was doing. He was playing his cards right, y'all, when I think about it. But anyways, from then on, we started texting and talking every night. This went on for like a good 2 weeks, y'all. I'm talking about I was sleeping on the phone with this man, still thinking that that was his little brother. He asked me how old I was, and I told him that I was 17, and then I asked him how old he was. This man told me he was 20. And then he told me that he already knew I was 17 because he asked one of the teachers already, but he wanted to make sure. So y'all, he literally knew the whole time that I was 17. Anyways, the truth was about to set his ass free. He asked me out on a date and I was like, hell yeah. So we planned a date for next Saturday. Well, Wednesday, a couple days before our date, I literally found out everything. Like for part 4. Part 4 on how the guy I was dating lied about his age to get with me. And this story is my own. Okay, so boom, like I said, we had a date planned for Saturday, but Wednesday, the truth was revealed. The teacher was like, damn, Leo's mom hasn't been here in a while. She used to always pick him up, but now I'm always seeing the dad pick him up. I wonder what's going on. And I was like, huh, dad, what, huh? I said, that's not Leo's dad, that's his brother. And then she looked at me confused and was like, no, that's his father. And I just stared at her like, what? And I said, how old is he? She was like, 32. Y'all, my jaws dropped. He was actually single though, they were co-parenting, but he started picking up his son more literally because of me. I had the audacity to call him his little brother. From that day, I blocked him on everything and started hiding from him every time he came. So he thought I didn't work there anymore. He even asked about me. All the teachers had my back. Then eventually he stopped coming and the mom started picking up Leo. Thank God I didn't do nothing with him. These guys are weird. Story time on how I slept with a ghost that haunted my house. And no, I'm not crazy. Okay, so boom. I live in a haunted house with my parents and my little brother. I'm 16 and we've been dealing with this haunting for the past 8 years. My parents tried to move houses, but they followed us and continued to haunt my family. I would wake up to doors being wide open, things around the house being moved, and my mom even said one of these ghosts pushed her while she was opening the fridge. My little brother is so scared he sleeps with my parents every night. Let's just say lots of crazy weird things was happening. Well, one night, one of these ghosts got in my bed. I woke up and felt a presence right next to me. That presence was all up in my grill. Then it disappeared. This started happening every night and I kind of started expecting it. Well, one night something changed and the ghost had different plans. Like for part 2. Part 2 on how I slept with a ghost that haunted my house. Okay, so boom, like I said, this night the ghost had different plans for me. I felt my sheets slightly slip down and pressure on my body. The pressure made my body feel so heavy, and then I started feeling some things. And by the time those things was over, I just realized I did the nasty with a ghost. You gotta work with me. TikTok won't let me explain those things. Anyways, I told my parents and they were not having it. They paid big money to fly someone in and have them blessed and clear the home from any hauntings. We tried this before, but it didn't work. My parents just finally went with the big guns and hired the expensive guy because at this point things were going too far. So far it looks like it worked because none of us felt any hauntings or presence from then. But since I'm now disturbed and violated by a ghost, I'm in therapy and some people just call me crazy. But trust me, I know what went down. I felt it. Story time on how my parents sold me to my uncle. Okay, so boom, let's get straight into it. Ever since I was a kid, everyone would compliment me on how beautiful I was. Literally got complimented everywhere me and my family went. And I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, it's important. My parents didn't see me as their beautiful child. My parents see me as dollar signs. I was literally up for sale and my parents were bidding on who would pay the most to marry me. My mom started teaching me how to cook and clean and how to keep a man happy. One day while my mom was getting me ready and all dolled up for dinner, I told my mom I didn't want to marry anyone and she flat out told me I didn't have a choice. Well, little did I know that exact night my mom and I was having this conversation, my uncle was downstairs waiting on me. Like for part 2. On how my parents sold me to my uncle. Okay, so boom, like I said, my mom was getting me all dolled up for dinner and my uncle was downstairs waiting on me. I didn't know this at the time, of course. My mom and I go downstairs and I hear my dad say, "There she is. Isn't she beautiful?" Then I looked at a man who just smiled and said, "I like it." I asked my mom who was that guy and she told me, "Shh, that's your father's brother, sweetie, no more talking." So we all sat down and had dinner and my uncle was just staring at me, smiling at me and looking at me up and down. He was literally studying me. My dad even looked at him for validation. I was so confused. A little did I know this wasn't just a dinner. It was a tryout, an audition, if you will. If I would be good enough for my uncle. He was actually rich and looking for a wife and my dad was trying to sell me to him. Running out of time, like for part 3. Part 3 on how my parents sold me to my uncle. So like I said, we were having dinner and my dad was trying to sell me to my rich uncle. He was literally pitching a sale. She's beautiful, she cooks, she cleans, and she's very smart. And oh, she still has her V card. It was at that moment it hit me. I figured out what was going on. When my uncle left, my parents told me good job for being a good girl. I cried and told my parents I did not want to marry that man. I was 15 and he was like 40. But my parents told me I was going to marry him and I was going to like it. Well, fast forward a year later and they definitely sold me. And I lost my V card to my uncle on our wedding night. I hated it at first, but I kind of fell in love with him. And it didn't hurt that he was rich and I kind of lived stress-free. So yeah, my parents sold me and that sucks, but I ended up being okay with it. Lucky. And we all laugh about it now. Yeah, I know it's toxic and corrupt, but this is why it's an anonymous story. Story time on how I went on a Tinder date and my date tried to kill me. This story gets straight to the point, so let's get into it. Okay, so boom. I was 16 years old and I was lonely. All my friends had boyfriends, so I was always left out. But I didn't like anyone from school, so I went crazy on Tinder. Me and this guy both swiped, so we started talking. And after 2 weeks, he asked to meet up and go on a date. 2 weeks was a little fast, but again, I was lonely and I really wanted a stupid boyfriend. Don't be like me, y'all. But yeah, I went on the date and we met at a restaurant. And you guessed it, he was catfish. His picture, he was a tall, muscular guy. 6'3" with Rico Suave hair. But in person, he was bald, fat, and he was short. I was so pissed, I just wanted to turn around and leave, but he stood up to greet me, so I didn't want to be rude, so I just told myself I'll get a free meal. Y'all, during the day, I found out he was 40. Like for part 2. Part 2 on how I went on a Tinder date and my date tried to kill me. Okay, so boom, like I said, I found out he was 40 and he was catfished. I had to get out of there. After dinner, I told him it was nice meeting him and that I was gonna text him once I got home. But of course, I was just gonna block him. But that's none of his business. Anyways, he asked me if I wanted him to walk me to my car. But I said, no, that's fine. At this point, I was being very standoffish because it was like, dude, get away from me. And I think he noticed. It was pretty late at night, probably like 10 p.m. So when we left the restaurant, no one was really around. At
At this point, I'm kind of getting a little scared, so I kind of walk to my car a little quickly, about to open my door. And this guy comes out of nowhere right behind me and covers me with his arms and squeezes me. He covers my mouth so I wouldn't scream, and he whispered in my ear saying I was leaving with him whether I liked it or not. I tried to wiggle myself out, but I couldn't. He was too strong. And things got real. Like for part 3. On how I went on a Tinder date and my date tried to kill me. Okay, so boom, like I said, he comes up behind me and squeezes me with his arms and covers my mouth so I wouldn't scream. I tried to wiggle my way out, but I couldn't. He was too strong. But since his arms was around my upper body and my mouth, my hand where I was holding the keys was free, but my other arm was being squeezed by him. Thank God all I needed was that one arm. And thank God I had pepper spray attached to my keys. So I took my pepper spray, sprayed him in his eyes, and he screamed. He let me go, and that's when I took my purse to reach for my taser. And yes, I tased him. Mama ain't raised no fool. I ran to my car, opened the door, and got home immediately. By the time I pulled out the parking lot, he was still on the floor. I got home and told my parents everything. They called the cops to the restaurant. He was gone by the time they got there. I just thank God he didn't know anything about me. Not my home, not my school, or personal life. All he knew was my first name. So if you're dating online, be careful. Story time on how my dad found out I had an OnlyFans and was using it to batter his dough. Okay, so boom. I was 18 at the time I started doing my OnlyFans. My OnlyFans was doing good, so I was able to move out and get my own spot. My dad was single and he lived alone, so I always came over to visit him every now and then. I never told my dad I did OnlyFans, and when he would ask me what my job was, I would just say I work from home, doing like customer service. Well, I was servicing the customers, all right. And little did I know he was one of them. Well, one day I went to go visit my dad and he was in his room watching some TV. He told me his computer wasn't working and if I could take a look at it and fix it for him. You know, typical things that parents usually ask their kids for. So I go over to the computer to take a look at it and see what's going on. Child, little did I know once I fixed that computer, I was going to be in for a rude awakening. Like for part 2. Part 2 on how my dad found out I had an OnlyFans and was using it to batter his dough. So like I said, I went to go visit my dad and he asked me to take a look at the computer because it wasn't working. Now, when I went over to the computer, once I took a look at everything, I found out what the issue was pretty quickly. The Ethernet cable wasn't plugged all the way in, so the internet wasn't working. I plugged it back in and everything was fine. Once I refreshed everything, I know that Google restore option. Yeah, that popped up and I was like, let me restore everything for him, thinking that he was going to be happy that everything was still saved. Well, once I restored everything, 6 tabs opened up and OnlyFans was one of them. I was shocked that he even had an OnlyFans account. So I clicked on the tab and I signed in. I know, y'all probably like, why? But I mean, I was nosy. Y'all telling me I wouldn't be either. He was signed into his account, so I started looking through it. All of a sudden, my heart dropped. There was my OnlyFans and he had exclusive content. Like for part 3. Part 3 on how my dad found out I had an OnlyFans and was using it to batter his dough. So like I said, he was signed into his OnlyFans, so I started looking through it. And I found out that he was subscribed to me for a whole year. He had the year subscription. Do you hear me? He was one of the customers that were getting exclusive content. He was seeing everything. And I know y'all must be asking, why would he watch his daughter to, batter his dough? Well, he kind of doesn't know it's me. So my OnlyFans is anonymous, like this story. I wear a bejeweled ski mask in all my pictures and videos, and my name is obviously fake. My dad is watching me, and I mean all of me, but he doesn't know it's me. So I closed it and told him everything was fixed, but I had to go home. Told him that I forgot to meet up with a friend. So he said, okay, thanks, drive safe, sweetie. I cringed. Went home, had a nervous breakdown, and learned how to block him. And now I have to live the rest of my life knowing my dad used my content for battering.
mom sleeping with her sister's husband, her brother-in-law. And this is a continuation of the story time where my mom married my boyfriend. Okay, so boom. After my mom divorced my boyfriend for treating her horribly, trying to get back with me and cheating on her religiously, my mom got very depressed because me or my dad was not talking to her. The only person that was there for her was her sister, which is my aunt. My auntie had the biggest heart in the world. She was very forgiving. So even after my mom did what she did, my auntie still tried to play peacemaker. She tried to make me and my mom squash everything, but that wasn't about to happen because my mom slept, got pregnant, and married my boyfriend. I'm not forgiving anything. So because my mom was so sad and lonely, my auntie was going over there a lot more than usual just to be her support system. So of course, because my auntie was spending so much time there, her husband ended up helping my mom a lot too. And that was a big mistake. Like for part two on how I caught my mom sleeping with her sister's husband, her brother-in-law. And this is a continuation of the story time where my mom slept with my boyfriend. So like I said, my auntie had a big heart and was spending a lot of time with my mom because my mom had no one else. And since my auntie was spending a lot of time there, so was her husband. But there were times where my auntie couldn't see my mom because she was at work. So she sent her husband to just do a quick checkup and give her some of the food that my auntie cooked. For some reason, my auntie still trusted my mom, which is her little sister. I don't know why, but she did. Well, one day while my auntie was at work, my mom called her saying she was having a breakdown. So my auntie sent her husband to check on her and give her some food. But in actuality, what was really happening is that when my auntie went to work, my mom would call and fake like she's having a breakdown and she needs help, just so my auntie would send her husband to the rescue. And so that it wouldn't look suspicious while he was there. Well, their little sick plan didn't work this time. Like for part three. Part 3 on how I caught my mom sleeping with her sister's husband, her brother-in-law. And this is a continuation of the story time where my mom slept with my boyfriend. Like I said, my mom called my auntie acting like she was having a nervous breakdown, so my auntie sent her husband to check on her. But what they didn't know is that my auntie called me. My auntie basically called me because she really felt bad for my mom. She kept telling me to go check on her to make sure she's okay because she's going through a lot right now. She says she know what my mom did was wrong, but that I only have one mom, and if God forbid something happened, I wouldn't regret not talking to my mom. So I said, fine. I told my dad to drop me over to my mom's house. When I go over there, I used the keys that I still had, and then I looked all of downstairs. No one was downstairs, so I went upstairs. As soon as I got upstairs, I heard moaning. So I did what anybody would do. I immediately got suspicious and pulled out my phone to start recording. I slowly made it over to my mom's room and opened the door. And there it was, like for part 4. Part 4 on how I caught my mom sleeping with her sister's husband, her brother-in-law. And this is a continuation of the story time where my mom married my boyfriend. So like I said, I pulled out my phone and started recording, and I walked over to my mom's room. I opened the door, and there it was. My mom was fully naked on the bed. And my auntie's husband's belt was unbuckled, and his shirt was unbuttoned. He was on top of her kissing her, then jumped off and fell to the floor. He immediately yells, "It's not what it looks like." And I said, "Oh, shut up. I'm recording everything." The funny part is I wasn't even shocked. When I told him my dad was downstairs, he bolted out the room, ran to his car, and he left. I called my mom a stupid It wasn't kind words. And she was just there bawling her eyes out. I immediately sent the video to my auntie. And even though my auntie's husband said they never actually did the nasty because I stopped it before it happened, my auntie didn't care and divorced him because, like, he still tried. And my mom was left with nothing and no one except her 3 cats. As she deserves.